Now though, it's the latest lunchtime news.
Times in Manchester as the government urges people to be patient about the decision on lockdown lifting. The military has been sent in to boost surge testing after a rise in COVID cases, so could that see June the 21st delayed?
This is a finely balanced decision. We're going to make a call on the 14th of June, and so I just urge people to be patient for a few more days before we make that judgment. If we can reopen further on the 21st of June, of course we'd do so.
Also this lunchtime, a teenager has gone on trial charged with murdering two sisters in a London park. Ryanair and British Airways investigated over cash refunds for cancelled flights or planes passengers weren't allowed on. And from Kent to the Congo, the 30-stone gorilla who's gone to Africa to try to save his species.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain.
Good afternoon. The military has been sent into Greater Manchester and parts of Scotland in a bid to slow down the rise in COVID cases due to the Delta variant. So could the rise delay the so-called Freedom Day when lockdown restrictions could be lifted on June the 21st across England? The government said once again today it's a finely balanced decision, but in a glimmer of hope from the NHS, one of its bosses said this lunchtime the vaccines appear to have broken the link between infections and deaths. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
Are they working? Probably. The organisation representing NHS trusts in England says rising infections are not being matched by rising numbers of seriously ill people in hospital. But are they working quickly enough? Quickly enough for the full relaxation of restrictions on the 21st of June? That's a call for the government.
This is a finely balanced decision. We're going to make a call on the 14th of June, and so I just urge people to be patient for a few more days before we make that judgment. If we can reopen further on the 21st of June, of course we'd do so.
But that's not clear enough for some businesses. Theatre impresario Andrew Lloyd Webber says he's already had to remortgage his house and he'll reopen his 6 theatres in London on the 21st anyway. He went on, "We are going to open come hell or high water, and if that's not allowed, we will say, come to the theatre and arrest us."
Thank you.
But less dramatic businesses like the Rose and Crown pub in Leyland, Lancashire, are braced for bad news.
I think we kind of are prepared for them not to lift the restrictions in June, but I think we'd all rather just be told that now instead of waiting for a date that's been set. We're always waiting for dates at the moment, you know, and we all know the answer. We'd rather than be honest and say, look, it's not going ahead just yet.
The Prime Minister will announce his decision and the evidence it is based on Monday.
Carl, difficult decisions, as ministers keep saying. This is a balance between livelihoods and lives.
Yeah, that's right. But even within the cabinet, the minister who has been often described as being most in favour of getting the economy up and running again, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, today The Guardian are reporting that even he is willing to countenance a delay in the full reopening of up to 4 weeks, so long as the reopening is permanent once that point is reached. And I think if even Rishi Sunak is in favour of some kind of delay, that suggests that were the data to say that it's needed, then it would be very likely to get through cabinet. So at the moment, the decision is whether to have a delay. It's thought that either 2 weeks or 4 weeks are probably the delays that are being considered, that are in play, to give the vaccines a bit more time to work, particularly in that more vulnerable group of over 50s who should all have had their second vaccine by the time we get to June the 21st, but who might not all have had quite enough time, that 2 or 3 weeks that it takes to work fully.
The Prime Minister's questions was under pressure, not about June the 21st, but specifically about education.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a different aspect of the COVID crisis. Viewers might remember that last week his education catch-up czar, Kevin Collins, resigned when the government announced £1.4 billion of extra spending to help school children catch up with lost learning. Mr Collins was said to have wanted £15 billion to be spent on it instead. And today the Prime Minister came under pressure from Keir Starmer on this. The Prime Minister says, in fact, £3 billion is being spent and more money will be on the way, which leads me to think this might be an open door for Keir Starmer to be pushing at if more money is indeed on the way. It can look like he's eventually forced the Prime Minister into a U-turn when that's announced.
Carl Dinham, thank you very much. I'm joined now by our health editor, Emily Morgan. This from the boss of NHS providers saying today that the vaccines appear to have broken the link between infections, hospital admissions and deaths. What do you make of what Chris Hossain said?
It's good news, obviously, isn't it? Good news. I mean, what he said earlier was based on conversations that he has with chief executives of hospitals up and down the country. I think most interestingly, obviously, are the hospitals in those hotspot areas like Bolton. So what he appears to be confirming, and what is actually looking like the statistics are also saying so far, what ministers and what scientists are all hoping for, is that hospitals in those areas are coping. That yes, cases are rising, but it's not translating into patients getting severely ill. He says patients are younger, they're therefore not so much at risk, they're not necessarily going into critical care, and they're not staying that long. We know that the vaccine is a little less effective against this variant that was first detected in India. So it is really good news that it appears to be keeping the vulnerable out of hospitals. And as I say, that is being borne out in the statistics. Hospital admissions are still under 1,000. Deaths are still under about 15 daily at the moment. So it does appear that this link between cases and people getting really ill does seem to be maybe being broken. And one of the government's main considerations when deciding whether to push back on the 21st of June is whether hospitals are coping or whether they are being overwhelmed. So I think this will all feed into their decision making over the coming days.
Yeah, OK. Emily Morgan, thank you very much for that. Thank you. A teenager has gone on trial charged with murdering two sisters in a park in northwest London. The bodies of Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were found in Frayant Country Park a year ago this week, a few days after they had met for a birthday party. Daniel Hussain, a 19-year-old from southeast London, has been charged with their murders and possession of a knife. His trial began at the Old Bailey this morning. A warning. Some of the evidence heard was distressing. Sejal Karia is at the court. Sejal, talk us through what happened there earlier.
Well, Nina, just over an hour ago, the prosecution opened its case against 19-year-old Daniel Hussain, who's accused of murdering Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman in a park in northwest London a year ago. The jury was told the teenager stabbed the two sisters to death because a demon told him he'd win the lottery if he sacrificed women. They heard the police found a handwritten note signed in blood in his bedroom, in which he promised to sacrifice women in order to win the lottery. Oliver Glasgow QC told the jury, as it turned out, the demon did not come good on the bargain, since not only did the defendant not win the lottery, but the police identified all the evidence that link him to the murders. The jury heard the sisters had been stabbed multiple times. Miss Henry 8 times, Miss Smallman 28 times. Both sisters had been at the park to celebrate Miss Henry's birthday. The prosecution alleged Daniel Hussain bought a set of kitchen knives from Asda and was lying in wait in the park for potential victims. They also say that police found 3 folded up lottery tickets alongside the handwritten note. Daniel Hussain denies all the charges against him.
Sejal Karia, thank you. The High Court has found the government acted unlawfully when it gave a contract worth more than £500,000 to a market research company run by friends of the Prime Minister's former chief advisor, Dominic Cummings. The bosses of the agency, Public First, were friends of Mr Cummings, who left Downing Street last autumn. Both he and the government have denied any favouritism was shown towards the company, but the judge decided a failure to consider other firms meant there was a real danger of bias. Talks between Britain and the EU to resolve the post-Brexit row over Northern Ireland have ended without a breakthrough. The two sides spent more than 3 hours this morning trying to reach an agreement over customs controls on goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. And there's been another blow to the high street today. Gap says it's looking to close 19 of its stores in the UK and Ireland when their leases end next month. The company hasn't given details on the locations of the branches or how many staff could be affected. Staff at one of Oxford University's colleges have reportedly received threatening messages after students there voted to remove a portrait of the Queen from their common room. The graduate students from Magdalen College have voted to take down a portrait after they deemed it to be a symbol of colonialism. Sangeeta Lal joins me now. This has caused quite a row, hasn't it?
It really has. That was removed in one vote that was held among students from one college at Oxford University. And even though it's happened at Oxford University, it's actually sparked a much wider debate about freedom of speech. Now, that portrait was actually a photo of a print that was put up in the common room there as decoration back in 2013, but recently was part of a political debate there. It was voted to be removed, according to the political website Guido Fawkes, because some students there felt it was a symbol of colonialism. Now, this has sparked a debate, one that the Education Minister, Gavin Williamson, has also got involved in on Twitter, calling the move simply absurd. He went on to say the Queen is head of state and a symbol of what is best about the UK. During her long reign, she has worked tirelessly to promote British values of tolerance, inclusivity and respect around the world. Now, today, other ministers have also spoken about this. The Housing Minister, Robert Jenrick, said instead of being as strong as what Gavin Williams said, he, when asked about it, said that it was part of student union politics, but actually in his own office was proud to have a portrait of the Queen there too.
The president of the college in question has spoken out too.
Yes, she has. So today the barrister Dinah Rose has spoken in support of her students, actually, and as you say, mentions that staff there have been receiving threats about this debate that's mostly taking place on Twitter now, but she's also receiving threatening messages and says staff have been receiving them as a result of the debate. She said the college supports free speech and the right to autonomy. On Twitter she wrote, maybe the students will vote to put it up again, maybe they won't. She also said being a student is about more than studying. It's about exploring and debating ideas. It's sometimes about provoking the older generation. Looks like that isn't so hard to do these days. Now, at the moment, that print is in storage. It's not yet known what will happen with that, but outside of Oxford University, what is known is this is part of a much wider debate about freedom of speech and political debates.
Sangeeta Lal, thank you. Ryanair and British Airways are being investigated over complaints they didn't offer refunds to people unable to fly because of the pandemic. The Competition and Markets Authority is looking into whether either of the airlines breached consumer laws by not offering refunds to customers for cancelled flights or when flights took place but it was illegal for people to travel. For reaction, I'm joined by the travel expert, Simon Calder. Thanks for talking to us this lunchtime. What do you make of this development today?
OK, well, it's important to understand exactly what it's about, and that is about flights that went ahead. It's nothing to do with cancellations. If your flight is cancelled, then in theory, you should get a full refund within a week, although over the past 15 months, it's often taken a lot longer than this. No, this is about flights on airlines that went ahead, even though people weren't able to catch them because they were obeying the lockdown rules, most notably, of course, 19 weeks from the start of this year, in which it was simply illegal to travel abroad for non-essential purposes. Now, The airlines say, look, we're following the air passenger rights rules, and that means that we're actually not obliged to give a refund if the flight goes ahead. We're actually going beyond that. We're doing more than we should do because we're offering people the chance, well, in Ryanair's case, to rebook, in British Airways' case, to rebook or take a voucher. However, the Competition and Markets Authority says, no, there's a different law that applies to this sort of thing, and that is if government rules mean it's impossible for you to fulfil a contract, i.e. turn up at the airport and get on your plane, then the contract is frustrated, to use the technical term, which means that you should get your money back. At the moment, there's no absolute definite law about that, and I imagine we're going to see quite a legal wrangle.
What's your prediction then? I know throughout the pandemic you've had to answer questions and give predictions about who might get where, when. What's your prediction on this? Do you think it could lead to people getting their money back for flights they couldn't get on because to take that flight it would have been illegal at the time?
Oh, sure, yes. I mean, and there's every chance, given that this is a government organisation that has come up with this and said, look, you've really got to sort yourselves out. There's every possibility that, that a court may find that, yep, this contract went ahead, but you weren't. This contract is null and void because you couldn't actually get on the plane. Therefore, Ryanair, therefore British Airways, you've got to give the money back, and that would cost, I'm imagining, hundreds of millions of pounds from the airlines. It may be, of course, they can argue, look, we did all we had to do and more, and it simply wouldn't be reasonable to expect us to refund people on occasions when they effectively chose not to travel. The airlines are absolutely furious with this. British Airways put out a release saying that they thought it was incredible that the government was continuing to punish an airline that's been on its knees for over a year, and they say they've complied with the law at every stage. I'm afraid it will be a long drawn out wrangle, but if you are one of those millions of people who had a flight booking that you couldn't take, well, stand by, because it may be that you will be able in time to get a full cash refund.
And stand by, because we have seen other companies, package holiday companies, been in this similar position who have had to eventually pay refunds back, haven't we?
Yes, I mean, the law affecting package holidays is somewhat different, but basically the idea is that, yep, if you couldn't take the holiday and it wasn't your fault, you didn't decide to cancel, the government effectively decided for you, then you should get all your money back. But meanwhile, of course, the travel industry continues to say, look, things are supposed to be getting better with the vaccine, but we still don't have any realistic prospects for this summer. The green list is basically down to Gibraltar and Iceland now.
Simon Calder, thank you very much. Thank you. Excitement is growing ahead of the Euro 2020 with the opening matches just days away now. The tournament was postponed last summer and will be staged in 20 cities across the continent from Friday. Wales's first match is against Switzerland on Saturday in Baku in Azerbaijan, where we can join Lucy Watson. Lucy, not long to go now after such a long wait.
The countdown is very much on, with just 3 days to go, Nina. The players are all here, they're all fit, and they are all ready to perform. Now, we were at their training session this morning, and there is a real sense of fun and camaraderie among them. Their motto is "Together Stronger," and it really needs to be in this COVID era. They are existing in a very tight bubble with only each other for company. They can only be either at their hotel or that training camp. There is no freedom of movement, but despite that challenge, spirits are still high. Memories of 2016 and that historic journey to the semi-finals for them are not so distant. Can they do it again, though? Well, if you ask some of the senior members of the squad, they approach that question with caution. Ask the younger ones, however, and they are just desperate to get on that pitch and to prove themselves. Aside from all of that, though, having these championships here in Baku, hosting a team like Wales, is inspirational for the youth of Azerbaijan.
I am very excited that the championships are here in Baku. I'm very excited to see famous players from other countries.
What do you think of Gareth Bale?
I don't like him because He's missing a lot of trainings and his attitude is very bad.
Well, Ibrahim might not be Gareth Bale's #1 fan, but for the 600 to 700 Welsh supporters expected to make their way here by Saturday, he most definitely is their #1. Having one of the world's best on their side definitely makes them stand that little bit taller. Here's hoping for a brilliant show on Saturday by the Dragons.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucy Watson, enjoy the football. Thank you. Finally, this lunchtime, the teenage gorilla who's flown out to Africa from Kent to try to save his species from extinction. Born and raised here at an animal park, Joshi has travelled thousands of miles to make his new home in the Republic of the Congo and will soon be living wild and free in the forests. Faye Barker reports on Joshi's journey.
Joshi! The first sense of a different life. This, the end of a 4,000-mile journey answering a call of the wild.
And here we're taking Joshi from Howlett, who's 13 years old, and rewilding him in the Congo.
It started in Kent. Joshi, a 30-stone teenage Western lowland gorilla, has always lived in the UK. He's now endured a long and careful journey to the Republic of Congo to help save his species.
This is the area where the gorillas used to live and they've been hunted to extinction. So we're restoring natural habitats and also hopefully just giving them a better chance of living out lives they should lead.
Although his ancestral home, it's all new. He's had to slowly acclimatise and in recent weeks has met 2 younger orphaned males who'll teach him the ropes on a safe island. In another year or so, they'll all move again to finally integrate with others in the wild.
I have a bit of trepidation because I know and love Joshi, and he's a sweet-natured gorilla. I'm hopeful that he can fulfil his promise and live a life in the wild. That's always been the reason why we do this.
For Joshi, this new calling is one that will help protect his kind and help them flourish once again. Faye Barker, ITV News.
That's all we've got time for this lunchtime. Join Lucrezia Millarini for the very latest on the ITV Evening News at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather. From me and everyone here for now, bye-bye.